Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano. Today is 28th of November, 2025. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So some big Tornado Cash related news that happened a couple of days ago here. Paul Grohl, Coinbase's chief legal officer, did a little thread on it, but essentially the news is that the Fifth Circuit in the US held that the US Treasury sanctions against Tornado Cash smart contracts are unlawful. This is a historic win for crypto and all who care about defending liberty. Coinbase is proud to have helped lead this important challenge. Now, there's been a lot of different takes on this, but essentially the TLDR is that because this has been ruled to be unlawful, as Paul says here, the Tornado Cash smart contracts must now be removed from the sanctions list, and US persons will once again be allowed to use this privacy-protecting protocol. Put another way, the government's overreach will not stand. You know, what I find kind of insane about this, and obviously this goes beyond crypto, but what I find most insane about this is the fact that there will be no consequences for the government over this. Like, no one will lose their job, no one's going to have to pay a fine, nothing's going to happen to them, even though they broke the law, right? At least that's what seems to always happen whenever the government literally breaks the law or does something unlawful. They're not held to the same kind of consequences that you or I would be held to if we were to break the law, right? And I think this is obviously, as I said, not a crypto specific thing. It's a broader thing here, but that's one thing that's always annoyed me about these kind of things, because for years, because it's been, 2+ years since the contracts, the Tornado Cash contracts were sanctioned, there have been a bunch of people that have fought against this. Lots of money spent, a lot of hours put into this, all to get a court to rule that what the government did, or what the Treasury Department did in this case, was unlawful, right? Was literally against the law. So if that's the case, then that's not in my eyes justice. Like, I'm glad that this case was won in particular, but that's not justice, right? Like, justice is the true justice would be this not happening to begin with, and the government not being allowed to do this to begin with. But I'm just really frustrated generally about this, and I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, and I just kept getting more and more frustrated over it, because I know some of the people that were involved in these cases. Like, personally, I know what they went through. I know kind of the toll they had on some of them mentally as well, putting themselves in the crossfire, essentially putting their names to a case going against the government, going against the Treasury Department, going against OFAC, against sanctions. Like, that is something that takes courage to do, and it takes bravery to do, and not to mention all the money that was spent as well, and all the effort that was put into this to get this result, all for a court to basically say that it was unlawful to begin with, right? So yeah, but now that's my general take there. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with me on that. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but that's my kind of view on it, at least from the threads that I've read about this on Twitter. Now, going forward, I guess, as Paul says here, the smart contracts, the Tornado Cash smart contracts, at least the immutable ones, need to be taken off the sanctions list, which means that US persons or citizens will legally be able to get their funds out of the Tornado Cash protocol, and they may be able to use it. I don't know about that. Like, that's not confirmed. I don't know if they're going to be able to use those contracts or not, because there might be separate contracts. It just depends on which ones get taken off the sanctions list, if they even get taken off. So don't kind of take my word for it. Definitely do your own research on this if you're planning on interacting with the Tornado Cash protocol at all. But yeah, that's essentially what has happened here. Now, this actually extends beyond the Tornado Cash smart contracts. It basically extends to every immutable smart contract if you read the letter of what was actually said here. And Paul kind of has a tweet about this where he says, the court ruled that while the Treasury has the power to take actions against property, the open source immutable smart contracts at the core of Tornado Cash can't be owned by anyone and so are not property subject to sanctions. And that's the important bit of language here. Because they're immutable, because the smart contracts are immutable, they're not owned by anyone, they can't be, subject to sanctions as the law is written today. Obviously, the law can be changed, and then you can basically say, well, things that aren't property can be subject to sanctions, such as smart contracts. Like, that is a possibility as well. It's not like they can't change the law. They certainly can. But that's a much higher bar than just regulation by enforcement here, right? Or just law setting by enforcement. You have to actually write legislation. You have to actually get it passed through Congress. You have to get it written into law. And now with, a change in administration happening quite soon, and with that administration, I believe, having control of pretty much every arm of government here, and them being very pro-crypto, I don't see them doing this. So this is, it really is a huge win. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm just frustrated about the fact that there's not going to be any consequences for the government from this, because there never is for the government. Like, they're just a protected species. But yeah, it also applies to immutable smart contracts, which means that like if that is the way the law is currently written, and we expect the law not to change at least over the next 4 years under this the next administration, I should say, then it's bullish for immutable smart contracts generally. It's bullish for protocols working towards becoming immutable, becoming ungoverned smart contracts, or having the core of their protocols not being governable, if only to make sure that they can't be, I guess, like prosecuted for creating these things, right, or for essentially creating things like DeFi protocols. DeFi has been under attack for things like money transmission and not having a money transmitter license, and I guess like money laundering and fraud and all that sorts of stuff. But if the smart contracts are immutable, and if immutable smart contracts are not property and thus not subject to sanctions, then I guess like in this in the particular case of sanctions, it's bullish, or I guess like it's a motivation to make your smart contracts immutable. At least that's my take there. But anyway, you can go read Paul's whole tweet thread for yourself if you would like to. I'm sure you guys saw a bunch of takes from other people on this, but generally, yeah, this doesn't seem to be, there doesn't seem to be any negatives here, besides the fact that I guess like Roman Storm and Alexei Pertsev are still fighting their cases. They're still not off the hook here. This just applies to the sanctions that were placed on the core Tornado Cash smart contracts on Ethereum L1. So yeah, the Roman and Alexei are still unfortunately fighting their battles there, which again is a whole another thing that is another injustice that's happening, but hopefully they are able to win their cases as well. All right, moving on. So a big kind of bit of movement with regards to blobs today. So you know what? I should actually give a bit of context around this before I start talking about this. But as you guys know with blobs, and I've been talking about this on the refuel for months now, blobs had a target of 3. So 3 blobs per slot with a max of 6 blobs per slot. That was done, it was done in I guess like in a rather conservative way. We didn't want to have much blobs to start with when blobs went live in March of this year, because we didn't want to overload the network. And we didn't even have data on how the network would react to blobs. And it's not just a bandwidth, it's also transaction inclusion, it's reorg rates, it's all that sorts of stuff. So we obviously wanted to start conservatively and then ramp that up over time. Now, as you guys know, for pretty much the entire month of November, blobs have been at target. There have been I think on average at least, no days where blobs have not been at target, which means that blobs are not free anymore. They go up in price based on the natural fee market that forms around supply and demand. And when the supply limit has been hit, demand is still going up. Things get more expensive. Now, this is not a long-term sustainable thing. We shouldn't want this to be long-term sustainable, because those fees are passed on to users at layer 2s. They're not just eaten by the layer 2s themselves. They will definitely pass that on to users in order to pay for those. And the longer that the blobs are at capacity and the more demand comes in, the higher the fees go. Obviously good for ETH value accrual in terms of fee capture, and also good for the burn and for the memes around that. But that's, I guess, like a short-term benefit. Long-term, definitely not a benefit here. And there's actually a tweet here from Bread talks a little bit about this, where he mentioned that blobs are actually more expensive than call data now. As you guys will remember, call data was the place that rollups would post their data before blobs came along. And now that blobs are more expensive than call data, what essentially happens is some of the rollups have a mechanism inbuilt where they basically just like switch between the two. So if call data is cheaper than blobs, they'll post it to call data. If blobs is cheaper than call data, they'll post it to blobs, and so on and so forth. And they'll switch between the two. Now, this again is a short-term thing, because call data is actually going to be repriced and made much more expensive in a future hard fork. I don't know if it'll happen in Pectra, but it might still happen in Pectra. If not, it'll be the fork after that. So this is really just like something that is very temporary. It's not going to be a strategy going forward, because we don't want this to be a strategy going forward, right? We don't want the network, we don't want, I guess, like layer 2s doing this. We made blobs for them. They should be using the blobs. But as a community, as a network now, we need to scale up those blobs, because they're more expensive than call data, which is just crazy when you think about it, right? And we don't want this kind of arbitrage having to happen between the two markets here. Now, in saying all of that, the thing that I want to talk about was this new bit of research that came out of the ETH Panda Ops team at the Ethereum Foundation here, that looks into what is a safe limit that we can raise blobs to in Pectra. Like for Petra's hopefully going live in March or April. So what's a safe limit here? And this is a really great bit of research. It was based on, I guess, like a direct, data that was coming from home and solo stakers, because those are the ones that we really want to protect here. Pretty much like every other staker would be fine with an increase. It's all the solo and home stakers and those bandwidth constricted users that we wanted to get telemetry from in order to make an informed decision here. Now, Sam here, Sam Calder Mason, here on Twitter, posted the TLDR is that he believes that a increase to 4 blobs per block with a max of 8 and 6 blobs per block with a max of 9 are both safe for mainnet under current conditions, because I believe 95% of the entire network is able to handle an increase to those based on the data that he was able to gather here. Now, this is exactly the data that we want to see. I remember I mentioned this on the refuel, saying that we needed more data around this before we could make any, I guess, like concrete proposals here. But yeah, it seems like this is something that will satisfy the core devs in order to increase the blob target to 4 or the blobs to 4/8 or 6/9. I'm personally in favor of 6/9 because 4/8 is not enough, considering that it has to happen at every hard fork. And if we do it in Pectra and we only do 4/8, and then we have to wait another year to do another increase, I know PeerDAS is potentially, I mean, hopefully coming in the upgrade after Pectra and Fusaka, which is going to go live, look, realistically early 2026. I'm not going to say late 2025 because it's probably not going to happen then, but early 2026, that's still going to be too long, especially because we know that the demand is already there, it's already been met, and we're already at capacity here. So I want an increase of 6 per slot, target of 6 per slot with a max of 9 here, which should give us, I mean, I'm not going to say enough breathing room, but should give us as much breathing room as we can possibly ask for in the current state of things before we get PeerDAS, because PeerDAS is that order of magnitude unlock, where, just a refresher for those who don't know, it essentially means not every node operator or every, I guess, node operator is the right term here. Not every node operator in the network needs to hold all of the blobs. We're basically like sharding the blobs, we're sharding the blobs and then using data availability sampling to make sure that everything's kind of kosher and everything's secure. But essentially that is an order of magnitude increase, and that basically means that we can increase the blobs way higher than what they are now safely without increasing the overall burden on the network. Whereas a blunt, I guess, like kind of brute force increase with this, with going from 3 to /6 to 6/9 is more of a, I guess, like burden on the network and more of a brute force thing here. But we have the data that backs it up now that basically says that that's okay. We can do that. There's nothing actually wrong with that at this point in time. So great to see that. Great to see this research put out there. You can go check out this research for yourself if you want to. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. But as I said, I'm in favor of an increase to 6/9 here. I am ready and willing to store as many blobs as you can throw at me. As you guys know, I store all the blobs permanently. They expire after 18 days on mainnet, but I store them all permanently on my NASs, and they're all there. Like, since day one of Blobs going live, they're all still there. They're all kicking along. They're all filling up my storage space there, but I got plenty. I've got like 100 terabytes of storage space. So give me all the blobs. Eventually that's going to be hit, especially as we scale them up like exponentially with PeerDAS and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to store them. It's just sitting there. It's in my wardrobe. It's just sitting there on a server there. But anyway, enough about that. Moving on to the next update, which is from Preston Van Loon. So this isn't an update. It's more of something that happened a few hours ago, which was like a minor Ethereum mainnet incident. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this was twofold. One, I wanted to give some, I guess, like context around this because people would have seen this and be like, what's going on? So essentially what happened over, I think, a 90-minute period or a 2-hour period, there were 40 invalid blocks from the MEV boost pipeline. The root cause wasn't known at the beginning, but then Preston basically said the root cause was MEV boost relays causing invalid blocks to be produced. This is not a bug in any client software or the Ethereum protocol, and a post-mortem report is expected to come after the issue is fully resolved. Now, as you guys know, MEV boost is this kind of sidecar software that like 95% of the network uses to build their blocks. It's got a pipeline to it where essentially you have like these searchers and these builders that, or I guess like searchers / builders. I mean, they can be the same thing, but they can also be separate. That sends that builds blocks and then sends it to a relay, and the relay sends it to validators, and then validators propose the block on the network, and you know, that's the whole pipeline essentially. But that MEV boost software is not part of the core protocol. It is, as I said, sidecar software, which means that it can have its own bugs, right? It can have its own issues, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. And the most frustrating thing about this, I think, for core developers is that they have to fix this, or they have to diagnose this, and they have to basically look into this whenever something goes wrong, even though it's not their software. Like, that's not something that they've worked on. It's not something that that is part of their usual, I guess, kind of remit to work on, or their usual kind of pipeline of things to monitor, and yet they have to be up across it because of the fact that 95% of the network uses it. Now, of course, this is, I wouldn't say a failure of the Ethereum protocol to date to deal with MEV in a better way. It's more of the fact that we have all these different ways we want to deal with MEV, specifically with ePBS as it relates to this Ethereum Proposer Builder separation. or I should say enshrined proposer builder separation, but I like Ethereum proposer builder, but yeah, it's enshrined proposer builder separation, which essentially eliminates relays and basically makes it so that this stuff, I mean, can still happen, but is like much rarer than what it is today, and is also part of the core protocol. That's why it's enshrined, so that the core devs can just worry about that and reason about that, rather than having to worry about these sorts of issues here. Now, in terms of when ePBS could go live on the network, I think I highlighted a post the other day from Potez. Yeah, it was on the last refuel. I basically said that he wants to target inclusion in Fusaka, but Fusaka is looking like a pretty big upgrade at this point. I mean, PeerDAS alone is pretty big, and doing PeerDAS and ePBS at the same time, yeah, it might not be something that the core devs want to do, so we'll have to see. But I definitely want to see ePBS on the network as well, because these issues just frustrate me as much as they frustrate the core devs, because I don't like that the MEV boost software is so critical to the network. It just causes issues. As you guys know, it's caused issues with censorship in the past as well. But yeah, we have a bunch of things being worked on to fix that. You know, Fossil is the inclusion list proposal that might go live in Fusaka as well. As I said, like Fusaka is getting pretty big at this point already, because there's so many cool things that are just becoming ready at the same time. But yeah, anyway, you can go, I guess, like, read this tweet if you want to, read Terrence's tweet, but I'm sure there'll be a post-mortem about this sooner rather than later. All right, Thomas from Nethermind gave us an update on what Nethermind is working on right now. So, as you guys know, Nethermind is a pretty big team, but I found out recently that there are over 300 people in the team right now, and Nethermind build the Ethereum execution client called Nethermind, but that's not the only thing they do. They do so much more than that, but most people will know them for their clients, but essentially they've got a whole list here of things that they're doing. So, as some of you may know already, they've been working closely with Starknet to scale Ethereum and work on Starks with them. They're doing a lot of client support, client builder stuff. They're working with Flashbots on their new thing called BuilderNet, which I'm actually going to talk about in a sec. They're executing on Justin Drake's Beam Chain vision, so they're one of the teams that want to help build that. They want to build more performant clients for rollups, so essentially join the Gigagas era. They've got a new rollup template that they launched the other day called Surge, which is based on Tycho's technology here, and they're doing open hardware initiatives with Flashbots as well. So they're doing a lot of different things across the Ethereum ecosystem, and you know, so they should, I guess, considering they've got so many people working there. Like, there's no use having 300 people working at your company if they're, you know, most of them aren't doing anything, right? Like, and that may sound silly of me to say, but there are a lot of companies, I mean, outside of crypto too, but inside of crypto, that have so many people that they hire because they just come into so much money, because maybe they do like a raise because they have a token or something like that. And then those people, most of them just do nothing, or just like, I mean, this happens all the time in the corporate world, but I guess like most of crypto isn't very corporate at this point. It's a lot of startups, right? Not to say that Nethermind is a startup at this point, but you get what I'm saying here. So it's great to see that they're working on so many different things. And I guess like the through line here, or at least the common theme, is that this is all Ethereum aligned stuff. They're not working on non-Ethereum things. You can see here that everything on this list involves Ethereum in some way. Even working on open hardware initiatives with Flashbots, that applies to Ethereum, because I would assume, I don't know for sure what they're working on, but I would assume they're working on stuff for like TEEs and ZK stuff and hardware for that, because as you guys know, they're proving is the most expensive thing for ZK technology, and creating ASICs that can do proving much cheaper is like the end game there for that. So that, you know, and then having obviously having that be open source, and open source hardware and open source software stack for that is critically important. So I'm sure they're working on all of that there. But anyway, I just wanted to give an update there on all the stuff Nethermind is working on. So as I mentioned, BuilderNet was announced by the Flashbots team recently, and what it is basically a decentralized block building network for Ethereum that runs on TEEs and shares MEV and gas fees with users. A lot of buzzwords there, but essentially it's supposed to be the end game of, or maybe not the end game, but like a potential end game design to eliminate as much toxic MEV as possible and share it back with users, while also doing, I guess, secure ordering and secure execution. So Victor Bunin, who's, I believe, involved with Flashbots in some way here, quote tweeted this tweet by saying he believes that this will kill censorship on Ethereum, kill exclusive order flow deals, have gas and MEV refunds built in, neutralize builder duopoly, and creates a pathway for L2 decentralization. Now, if to understand this fully, you need to understand what the current pipeline looks like for Ethereum block building and proposing. And I explained a little bit of this before, but essentially, as it exists today, I think 2 or 3 builders, block builders, a Titan build, Beaver build, and one of the other builders, they basically account for, it's got to be like 90% of all the blocks built on Ethereum. Now, obviously, this is quite centralized, or very centralized, I should say. But the end game is to have centralized beefy builders with cheap validation. Now, I know that is not everyone's end game. I know people disagree with this, but if you just look at the incentives, it's quite hard to, I guess, essentially have a decentralized kind of block building network. Now, in saying that, that's what BuilderNet is trying to do. They're trying to essentially make it so that, or go against the grain of, no, we don't believe that centralized block building is the end game. We believe that we can decentralize this with novel technologies such as TEEs, and this is how we're going to do it. Now, there's a thread here, which I'll link in the YouTube description, that explains in depth more of this, and I can't really give a TLDR on the refuel, and I don't fully understand how this works myself either. TEEs are very new. I'm still learning about them. It's quite complex stuff, and I don't want to be giving the wrong information, so I'm not going to even bother at this point. But if it does even half of what Victor claims it's able to do here, I think that's a pretty killer list there. But there was some comments where someone asked, can you share more technical details on how this solves censorship plus exclusive order flow? And then Victor replied by saying, with censorship, it makes block building distributed. So long as any block builder includes a bundle with the censored transaction, it will still be included in the block. That's similar to, I guess, like inclusion list as part of the fossil design there. So that's pretty straightforward. On exclusive order flow, it basically creates a way to attribute value based on MEV generated and refund that. And then Shia, I don't know how, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing your name wrong. She said, yep, one of the ideas behind BuilderNet is that you no longer have to submit exclusively to a centralized block builder in order to get refunds. Instead, you can get refunds from a network that's run by many builders behind the scenes. So that makes sense. I guess like it's more of a alignment kind of thing. I know that word's been, I guess, made fun of a lot in recent times, but it's more of an alignment thing where essentially, you want these builders to be part of this network, but how do you get them to be part of that? And there was another a comment here from Thogard who says, the interesting thing to watch isn't when Titan or Beaver joins BuilderNet, it's when they turn their non-BuilderNet designs off, which should be a function of the order flow. So it really is a function of the order flow. And what that means, to break it down a bit further, is it's basically a function of how much money you can make off of this, of these designs, because order flow is where these, I guess, like people, these builders are making their money from. Essentially, you will, in the simplest example, on chain, you'll do like a swap, and then that order flow will be sent to some pipeline. It depends on what decentralized exchange you're using, depends on what RPC you're using. It depends on a bunch of different factors, but then the profit of your order flow will be extracted in some way for these builders, and then they'll kind of make money off of that. Now, that's why Thogard is right here, where he says the interesting thing to watch is when these, builders join BuilderNet, but also turn off their own non-BuilderNet design. So turn off their in-house stuff and just be fully on BuilderNet, because maybe it's more profitable for them to do that. That I guess is the end game, essentially, to get them to do that. Now, as I said, if this works and I guess like fulfills half of what Victor says it can here, that would be incredibly bullish for the entire block building pipeline and would really work nicely and complement the existing solutions such as Fossil and ePBS that will hopefully go live on the network within the next 12 to 18 months to get them fully rolled out there. But yeah, that's the view on that there. All right, so just one little bit of FUD that I wanted to address that has been going on for years at this point. But as you guys know, a lot of these kind of Twitter accounts, a lot of people, they love to watch on-chain movements of different types of assets, right? So they like to watch things like when the Ethereum Foundation moves ETH to an exchange, or addresses linked to the Ethereum Foundation address moves funds to an exchange, or when there's a big movement of on-chain token, on-chain of some token, right? We've all seen these accounts. We've all seen people pile onto this. But what I wanted to talk about was the fact that you can't just, I guess, get any information and get accurate information from an on-chain movement. And the perfect example of this is actually a recent thing that happened a couple of days ago, where this account that is pretty popular that tracks a lot of this stuff called Look On Chain tweeted out saying an address linked to the Ethereum developer or the Ethereum Foundation account transferred over 5,000 ETH, which is about $20 million, to Kraken 1 hour ago. Now, of course, everyone assumes this is the Ethereum Foundation. As you guys know, there's a meme in the community that the Ethereum Foundation is always selling ETH, and they're always selling the top, and they're just dumping on everyone, which is ridiculous because no one ever asks what the other foundations are doing with their tokens, right? It's always the Ethereum Foundation. The Ethereum Foundation has said, well, our budget's $100 million a year. We have like $1 billion worth of money right now in ETH and in fiat, and we do have to sell in order to keep funding what the Ethereum Foundation funds. And I've gone through that before, and there's a transparency report that you can check out there. But essentially, it's just a dumb FUD vector. But what's even dumber is the fact that Josh Stark, who is who's part of the leadership team at the Ethereum Foundation, had to reply to this tweet and basically say, this is just a really bad tweet because this wallet does not actually belong to the Ethereum Foundation in any way, and is 4 steps removed from the actual EF wallet address, which over a period of 9 years. And you can see here where Josh basically summarized this by saying what actually happened is that in 2015, the EF wallet paid 3 million ETH to some account. Now, 3 million ETH at the time in 2015 was worth basically nothing. I mean, even when ETH was like, I guess, $1 or something, it was worth $3 million. It wasn't worth anywhere near, I guess, the crazy amount that it's worth today. Like 3 million ETH, right? Like, I know $3 million back then, but if you contextualize it to what it's worth today, it's ridiculous. And then that wallet transferred 67,000 ETH to a different address. And then in 2016, it transferred 42,000 ETH to a different address. Then in 2017, it transferred another 242,000 ETH to a different address. And today, that final address there, a different address transferred 5,600 ETH to an exchange. It is very easy to know whether a transfer is from the EF Treasury or not because the EF Treasury has only ever been in one place since 2015, and it's the address labeled as ETH Dev on Etherscan. So I just wanted to the reason I bring this up is because stop trusting these kind of, I guess, like look on chain or whatever other, I guess, Twitter accounts for information about on-chain movements. They're wrong. Like, they're simply wrong. They don't have the relevant context or information to be able to make any kind of summary or any kind of conclusion off of these movements. As I said, yes, the Ethereum Foundation does sell ETH. And as Josh said here, it comes from the Ethereum developer account. It doesn't come from accounts that the Ethereum Foundation paid in freaking 2015, because they were paying a lot of people in ETH back then. They were paying a lot of organizations in ETH back then. They were transferring ETH to different parties back then. So if you are claiming that that's the Ethereum Foundation, just because it was funded or paid out of the Ethereum Foundation account, then that is dumb. It's just dumb. As I said, there's not enough context to make that conclusion. And in this case, it was totally wrong. So going forward, I would suggest that you really take anything that these kind of like on-chain tracker accounts tweet out with a grain of salt. Most of the time, if not like almost all the time, they're completely inaccurate. But anyway, enough ranting about that. Just wanted to highlight that for you guys there. All right, so Obel and EtherFi have teamed up, and I mean, they've been teamed up for a while now, but today they've announced a new expansion of Operation Solo Staker. So this initiative will help decentralize the EtherFi validator set by onboarding home stakers running Obel distributed validators. So you can actually get more information about this in the blog post here. So essentially, this is something that was originally created in late 2013. I remember I covered it on the Refuel back then in order to further decentralize out Ethereum, Ethereum staking and Ethereum validating. Now, with Obel's technology being fully live on mainnet and with distributed validator technology getting more and more popular by the day, they're launching phase 2 or expanding the Solo Staker program here with EtherFi in order to onboard more node operators onto the network. So if you want more information about this, you can go check out the blog post for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. So staying on the topic of staking, there was a bug report put out about the ETH staker, or sorry, I should say the staking deposit CLI, and this was put out by ETH staker on their GitHub here. So essentially, there was a bug found in the deposit CLI. So basically, the tool that everyone uses to, generate their key store files for when they set up like a staking node, whether that be as a solo staker or as a professional node operator, it doesn't matter. If you use the deposit CLI, you are affected by this bug or this security issue that has been patched at this point. So if you have generated keys, I believe from the patch onwards, which is kind of recent, you're not affected by this, but everyone else is affected by this. Now, not to alarm anyone about this if this is something that covers you, but this isn't something that is I guess, like highly exploitable. It's not something that is easy to exploit. It requires a lot of money to exploit this, and it requires a lot of, I guess, like effort to get access to the relevant files to exploit this. And to give you the TLDR here, hopefully I'm remembering this correctly because this was explained to me a couple of weeks ago, but hopefully I'm remembering this correctly here. So essentially, what this bug is basically, if as is said here in the GitHub report, if a malicious actor obtains your key store files, there is a risk of exposing the private key of those files. So while a small number of leaked key store files will require significant computing power to exploit, the attack becomes increasingly feasible as more files are compromised from a single tool run. So essentially, if someone has gotten access to your key store files, which obviously you should be keeping safe, but if for some reason they got access to your key store files, they may be able to, with enough computing power, break those key store files and basically get access to the private keys, which in the worst case scenario, they couldn't actually take your ETH. What they could do is they could get you slashed because they'd get access to your validators and basically get you slashed. And then in the worst case scenario, if it's enough validators getting slashed at the same time, you would lose all of your ETH to a slashing, or almost all of your ETH to a slashing event there. As I said, they can't steal your ETH, but that's basically the worst case scenario. But again, I don't want to alarm anyone here because, as was said in this report, it requires significant computing power to exploit. And there isn't a number put to this, but from my knowledge, it would require, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars to exploit this in terms of computing power in order to basically just slash you. You don't get anything out of this as an attacker. You aren't able to access the funds. You're able to do a slashing event, but to profit from that, I mean, you could, I guess, like short ETH on the market and hope ETH goes down, but then essentially that there's also a huge risk because you can't do that on any centralized exchanges because it's going to be quite obvious if you're some large actor being like, well, I'm just going to put a massive short on ETH just before this exploit happens, right? Like you're on a centralized exchange, you're KYC'd, so your identity is already known. You can do it on chain as well, right? But then I think that the I guess like the taking that bet that the price is going to move based on this exploit, based on the fact that you were able to slash someone or slash some, I guess, like some big staking operation, it just doesn't seem worth the risk here. There are way better ways to make money if you've already got a lot of money than trying to do this kind of exploit. Now, obviously, that's for a economically incentivized actor. That's not for like a nation state wanting to screw with Ethereum here. But as I said, they need access to your key store files. So I assume all the professional node operators out there were, I guess, like safely storing their key store files where it can't be just accessed remotely or anything like that, or it can't be accessed easily. But for, I guess, like solo and home operators, definitely something to, I guess, like check where your key store files are, check that you haven't kind of like leaked them out, or there's, check if maybe they got stolen or not. But if you are like a solo staker with even like 10 validators, again, it costs so much to do this exploit in order to, I don't know, slash you. Like it just doesn't seem feasible, right? It's just like the edgiest of edge cases when it comes to actually exploiting this. But I don't want to diminish the fact that this is obviously, an issue. It is something that affects pretty much everyone that used the staking deposit CLI, which was known as the ETH2 deposit CLI, as well as the ETH staker deposit CLI and the Wagyu keygen CLI, Wagyu keygen tool, I should say here. If you used those tools to generate your key store files, then you are, I guess, like at risk. But as I said, the risk is so small that you're more likely to just get phished, but randomly on chain, like way more likely, probably 100 times more likely to do that than you are to lose anything here. But there is remediation. Essentially, it's remediation, but it's kind of annoying. The remediation is to regenerate the key store files with the fixed tools here with the bug patched. So you can regenerate the key store files, which would require you to essentially go through a whole process to do it and make sure you're securing those key store files. But you can do that, and there essentially is a bunch of guides for this if you want to do that as well. But you can go read this, I guess, like report here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But yeah, as I said, nothing to be kind of too concerned about, I guess. Honestly, I wouldn't even concern myself with it. I'm not concerned about this. Like I'm affected by this. Like as a solo staker, I'm not concerned about this. Like I don't think anyone's going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars just to slash my validators. It's like, okay, cool, bro. And also that, as I said, they have to still get access to my key store files to begin with. So it's just like a huge kind of effort for very little, if any, gain. So yeah, I don't think it's a huge issue there. But enough of me ranting about that. I just wanted to make it clear that you shouldn't, I guess, like, have a heart attack over this. You shouldn't stress over this. If you do want to make sure that you're fully not affected by this, you can regenerate your key store files. You can do that. As I said, there's a bunch of guides out there to do that. And yeah, it's been patched as far as I know from here. All right, last up. So this episode's gone a bit longer, but this is something that I really feel is, I guess, appropriate to talk about at this point in time. So on the last episode, I talked about the fact that the market's getting real heated. It feels like the last phase of the bull market, basically the parabolic phase of the bull market. And it's really easy to lose your head in this phase. Now, Lucid Eyes on the Daily Gwei Discord channel today asked me to essentially give some tips on how to keep your mental health in check during this period of time, because I'm sure, like Lucid Eyes, many of you are currently fully locked in and plugged in, and it's probably taking a toll on your mental health because there's so much going on, right? Like, prices are going up every day. You feel like you're missing out if you're not in a particular coin. You're FOMOing over the latest stuff happening on chain. There's so many chats popping off, so many people talking about crypto. It's absolutely crazy. And I fully understand that because I've been through that many times before. In terms of tips on how to maintain your mental health during this period of time, it's difficult. It's very difficult. And it's completely dependent on who you are as an individual and what kind of sacrifices you want to make in order to achieve, I guess, good mental health. Because you have to make a choice. You either accept the fact that your mental health is going to be shitty for a little while, maybe for the rest of the bull market, but due to that sacrifice, you may be able to take advantage of more opportunities in order to make more money, right? That's just the I guess, the black and white of it. But then the other side is, well, you could sacrifice potentially getting those opportunities by prioritizing your mental health, by not being fully locked in, by only being online for a couple of hours a day and then doing other stuff other than crypto. As I said, that means that you're probably going to miss out on opportunities to make money. So there are sacrifices on either end of the spectrum here. But just generally, if I'm looking back on how I've handled it in the past, I would say my most craziest cycle was last cycle. I've been around since 2013, but the craziest cycle for me was definitely the period of, I would probably say June 2020 to the end of 2021. So basically the whole bull market from the start of DeFi summer to the second top that we had there. That was definitely the craziest period ever in crypto for me, and one of the craziest periods in my life. My mental health was definitely completely wrecked by the end of that, to the point where I don't want to get into it because it's getting too much information if I get into exactly what happened in my life. But to the point where I wasn't doing too well for a while there. I'll just put it like that. I wasn't doing too well at all. I basically shut everyone out of my life for a long period of time there, and I almost killed some of my long-standing relationships with people because of it. Now, I directly attribute that to the fact that I didn't take care of my mental health during that 18-month period, and I basically had a meltdown, essentially, and it all hit me at once, and it was a pretty dark period, I think, to get through. It was weird, and it was something that I had to work through, and luckily I made it through it. I know there's some people that haven't made it through it, that in a similar position to me, and they've just been stuck in this hole. But thankfully, I was able to get out of it, and that's the end result, right? As I said, there are sacrifices to be made. Yeah, you can make more money. I definitely made more money by sacrificing my mental health. If I wasn't paying attention during those 18 months, I would have missed so much, right? And I honestly, I can't even say that I regret doing it, considering how much it changed my life. But again, I consider myself lucky that I was able to essentially get out of the rut that I was in, but also be, very conscious of it as well. But I'm still not in a good place, or I'm not a good place. I'm still not in a perfect place. I still have issues I need to work through. As I said the other day, my physical health has taken a toll because I've just fallen off the fitness wagon, if you will, and I've been struggling to get back onto it. So there's a lot of things going on in my life there. So I don't really have concrete tips for you, besides basically managing your time, managing your exposure to it. Because as I said, when I took I said this on the refill before, but in May of this year, you guys know, before the ETH ETF was approved, I took a 2.5 week cold turkey break from crypto. That was amazing for my mental health. That was some of the best things I ever did for my mental health. It felt like a pure cleanse of my mind. I wasn't worrying about all this crypto related stuff. I wasn't constantly online. I wasn't even on a computer that much because of the fact that I didn't have much crypto stuff to do. I literally was bored on my computer. I could play games and stuff like that, but Honestly, I wasn't even in the mood to do that. Most of my time was spent riding my bike. I did a lot of that during that time. I went out and saw friends more. I spent more time with my fiance. I did like a lot of stuff that was completely offline, I guess you could say, right? Not on a computer. And I felt a lot better. Now, obviously, that's not a sustainable way to do it. I'm not just going to leave crypto altogether to solve all my issues, but the way to do it is just to find that balance. And in a bull market, that balance is extremely hard to find because, as I said, if you try to balance in a bull market, you are definitely 100% guaranteed to miss out on opportunities. But you're also definitely 100% guaranteed to have better mental health because of it. So it's up to you what you want to do. You know, this bull market may last 6 more months, may last 12 more months. It's probably not going to last longer than that. Like 12 months would be the absolute max from here. And even that's like pushing it out. I personally don't think it's going to last that long. But hey, let's just say worst case scenario in terms of like sacrificing mental health, you have to do it for another 12 months. Do you think that's worth it? Do you think that that essentially sacrificing your good mental state, your good mental health, that deteriorating over time because you're just so locked in all the time, you're ignoring relationships in your life, you're ignoring personal responsibilities, you're ignoring you're ignoring the nagging sensation, because I'm sure a lot of you feel the same thing I feel, where you just get nagged at constantly by yourself, where it's like, you should stop doing this, you feel like shit, why are you doing this? Like, you know this is bad for you, but you just ignore that voice and you keep doing it because the other voices in your ear are being like, no, you need to lock in because there's money to be made, there's so much opportunity right now. And that's the issue. It's like you're stuck in two different places where each one has its own pros and cons, and you have to basically balance that. But balancing it also has its pros and cons. So as I said, like, I don't actually have good advice here, because I personally have gone through this and I personally know what the trade-offs are here. And as I said, I don't even regret doing that the first time, because I know that my life would be very different if I balanced, I guess, my crypto exposure during the meat of the bull market. I would have not made anywhere near as much money as I made. Not just the money either. I would not have grown as I grew. Daily Gwei was actually born during that time. Mid 2020, I started writing the Daily Gwei newsletter. Late 2020, I started doing the Daily Gwei YouTube channel. The Daily Gwei could have never been a thing, maybe, if I was more balanced there. So as you can see, like, for me, in my personal circumstance, where I consider myself very lucky, and you shouldn't think that I'm the norm or that your situation is going to mirror mine, but in my personal circumstance, I don't regret it. But you might regret it in 12 months' time, or it might even take longer than that. Maybe the bull market ends in 6 months, and then it takes 12 months for it to set in. Let's just say in 18 months' time, you just really feel those effects on you. It's like a delayed kind of feeling, but you feel it and you think to yourself, wow, that actually wasn't worth it because of such and such reason, or so and so reason. So yeah, I unfortunately don't have good advice other than you need to make the decision yourself. You need to basically understand how you are as a person, understand your mental state, understand the fact that it's not like a forever thing. If you do want to lock in totally, it's not a forever thing, but you need to realize that even if you feel fine after the bull market's over and you stop paying as much attention and you're not as locked in, like, I'm not going to guarantee this is going to happen, but there is a good chance that later on it's going to hit you, and it's going to hit you hard, and it's not going to be pretty. Like, I know from experience it's not pretty. So yeah, anyway. But also, there's this tweet thread that I spoke about the other day that I wanted to just highlight again. My pro tips for the bull market, my 6 pro tips here that you guys should definitely follow. Basically, it covers some of this, but I've seen, the number one thing that I've seen a lot of you guys doing is talking about the fact that, why is this coin pumping, but my coin isn't? I think I said this the other day, but this is just what happens in bull markets. Money rotates through constantly. There'll be coins pumping like crazy one week, then they'll be dead the next week, and there'll be newer coins pumping like crazy. And then that's basically how the bull market goes. And then it's basically keeps going like that for a little while, and then it just hits a wall and stops. And then we get like a massive dump and the bull market ends, essentially. That's just the way it always works. It's probably the way it's going to work for a long time in crypto. But yeah, I wouldn't fret about that. But anyway, you can go give this thread a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But yeah, as I said, like, I don't have any good tips other than the fact that the usual normal tips of, if you want to take care of your mental health, meditation, being more mindful about things, strengthening real life relationships with people that you care about, exercising is absolutely massive, of course, getting more fresh air, doing newer things in life. But all of that requires sacrificing time that you spend in crypto. And if you spend it all in crypto during the bull market, like full time, I'm talking like every day, like from when you wake up to when you go to bed, that's all you're doing, you will most likely make more money and have access to more opportunities, but you will also sacrifice the other stuff that I just talked about. Not just your mental health, but you'll sacrifice personal relationships to do it. You'll sacrifice your physical health as well, like all that sorts of stuff. So you have to just decide on what you are comfortable with at this point in your life. You could try and find a balance, but then you have to be comfortable with the fact that that balance also has its cons, right? It's not just all pros. I mean, life is a balance, right? That's kind of, I guess, the core premise of Buddhism, right? Like trying to find balance in life, or at least one of the core premises or core properties there. But anyway, I've ranted on for too long here. Wow, 45 minutes. Anyway, I'm going to end it there for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next time. Thanks, everyone.